Hey, Caleb, it's been a while.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the Journey to Growth podcast with
Thanks so
Arconnect.
much. I appreciate you having me. You guys have been doing some great work.
Thank you. So, can you give us a little bit of an introduction of who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, so Caleb Stepp, financial advisor, married, 5 kids, grew up in the South, got up here to Washington State, and very excited now to be mostly helping retirees and successful business owners with their money. So,
Okay, 5
enjoy.
kids. 5
Yes.
kids.
Yes.
Whose decision was that?
We had to stop at 5. I wanted it to be 10, like I was one of 10 kids growing up. So we stopped with a half-size family, but
Half size.
Yeah, half size.
family.
Yeah, I know.
I have 1. I couldn't imagine 5. I don't think I would be working as much, or maybe I would be, because that's a lot of mouths
It's
to
a
feed.
lot of mouths to feed.
Lot
The
of
college
mouths to
planning
feed.
is rough. It's,
Yeah, like you're all
not
getting
there
top
yet.
ramen for dinner for the next
Yeah.
20 years.
Yep.
You know, we're
Yep.
going to skip meals, but it is
No,
what it is.
we don't skip meals so much.
There you go.
Probably should.
There you go. So how long have you been in the finance kind of industry doing that?
Sure, about 5 years.
Okay.
Up until 5 years ago, I was a pastor out at a small church in Deer Park, serving with like youth and music and doing all sorts of stuff, and not making enough to feed 3 kids, then 4 kids, and now 5. So my financial advisor, who I'd worked with since college, said, Caleb, you should think about switching careers. Pastors, teachers do really well as financial advisors because they've got the interpersonal skills. We teach them the financial skills, and they're good to go. So I did that. Joined a big firm, was there 4 years. That was great. Really enjoyed most of that. But now this last year I've been independent and having a lot more freedom to craft my own brand, treat people how I want to treat them, grow at the pace that I want to grow. Lots of good things.
So you were a pastor for quite a few years.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of a different mindset, a different set of skills. So what type of things did you have to do to become a financial advisor? Was there a lot of training involved, or was it just, I'm going to do it, on Monday I walk in, I'm a financial advisor?
No, so the interview process was about 4 months long.
Okay.
And then the training process was 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
So you have to go through the training and certifications. Thankfully, the big firm that I joined paid for all of that. They paid me as an employee. That was wonderful, actually, financially, because coming out of being a pastor, making very little, they immediately doubled my salary. I don't think they knew, because in Washington State, they can't ask about past employee salaries and things. And so they probably just assumed, oh, this is probably what this guy's making. And no, it was about double that. So I instantly walked in and thought, oh my gosh, can we just stay here forever? This is so good. And then it got better. So that was fun. But yeah, 4 months of training, certifications, insurance license, stockbroker license, like all the things. And learning to speak the language of money. I knew how to talk to people,
language of money.
Yeah, but learning to say, hey, what is an IRA? How does retirement planning work? I had to brush up on my math skills.
Ugh.
Not great at math. Now I can use a calculator and talk about percentages, and it works a lot better. But had to practice that because that was not natural for me.
Yeah, I had the same scenario when I got into the finance industry.
Yeah.
Got offered a position, and I was like, oh, it's 2 times what I'm making.
Yes.
Okay, I guess I'm going to go do this. I didn't
Yeah.
think I would be in the finance
Yeah.
industry wearing a suit at the time. I'm like,
Yes.
let's go do it. And
Yeah.
just spent my whole entire time there growing within those companies, big box companies. And
Yep.
decided to do something different. a
Yeah.
little bit.
I see we're both
Yeah,
wearing
both
our
wore-
suit of the day.
Yeah.
I wore a suit every day for years.
I
with that
remember like a lot of
job,
times when
so.
we would meet up in the past, you usually were wearing a suit.
Yep.
you
Yep.
know,
I'd go door knocking in a suit. So in that firm, they trained us to go out and find clients, just knock on their door.
Yeah.
Which I honestly enjoyed. It's pretty brutal and it can be really hot or really cold, but doing that in a suit is particularly fun too.
Yeah.
People are, they're a little shocked somebody knocked on their door.
Well, it depends on what neighborhood you're going into. You might be a little shocked as well.
And that's one where, I can't go into the poor neighborhoods. They're not going to be folks to work with have money. So generally they're very safe, clean, nice neighborhoods because the folks there have some money or at least had enough to get a mortgage. Maybe they don't have any left, but they had some at some point.
Yeah. Real quick, for editing purposes, we're going to roll back that.
Okay.
Just because if people watch it or hear about it, he's a little...
The door knocking?
Okay, let's remove this because if they don't know context,
Correct.
And they
Correct.
listen to that.
Yeah.
They get, for whatever reason, they listen to only that part. I'm like, oh, why do
Yeah.
I want to call Caleb?
Yeah.
Type thing. I'm guilty of it too. So I always very
Yeah.
aware of my context of what I say.
Yes.
And a third party heard it. Would it be misconstrued for something else?
Yes.
Because
No,
everything
that
in this
certainly
world
would
is
be.
all about that. It's annoying as heck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Good call.
what made you decide to leave the big box, the big
Sure.
boy place,
Sure.
and do your own thing?
I've been thinking about it for a couple of years. I got into some other financial advisors, materials, podcasts like this one, different books. And so as I learned more and drifted away from the mainstream in my big box firm, there was that sense of, hey, if I'm really going to do these things, if I'm going to put this into practice, I'm going to have to make a jump here at some point. And then there were also some things where all of a sudden, by surprise, it's like, Caleb, please see the door. Nothing client related or anything, but it was one of those where they're like, see you later. I was topping out performance standards, but there were some things in my personal life that were difficult. And that's one where, especially coming from a pastoral background, you expect a guy like that to be squeaky clean and great. And money-wise, I was, right? There wasn't anything questionable there, but it was a question of, hey, you go ahead and go. And I said, all right, I'll go. Thank you. Thanks for the 4 years. Thanks for paying for my training, all that good stuff. And it's been great because heading into that independent mode, being able to do the tax planning like I wanted to do, they wouldn't let us use any particular software for that. They had a real kind of allergy to that. I was able to do that. I can do estate planning now in-house, or estate planning strategies, and talk with clients a lot more specifically about some things going on in their future, because it comes for all of us.
Yeah.
And all those different things combined to say, okay, now's the time. And looking back, it's fascinating to see how God prepared us for that moment. January of 2024, we were thinking about buying a bigger house. We had lifestyle creep happening badly.
Yeah.
Income had been going up for several years. We were looking at our house thinking, or I was thinking, oh, this isn't enough. We need someplace bigger and nicer, so on and so forth. So we were saving up additional dollars for a down payment. And then all of a sudden the surprise exit happened, starting my own business and realizing God had prepared these dollars for us and helped us not buy a house sooner.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we would have been out of cash and we would have had a twice as big a mortgage payment.
Yeah.
And instead we had extra cash to start a business. We had equity we could tap into through a HELOC, which thankfully we never needed, but it was very reassuring to have.
It was there.
It
Safety
was
net.
there. Yes. And so I knew that if business didn't go well, we could dig ourselves out. I could go get a normal job, be fine. And that was really reassuring. So yeah, it was an interesting year last year.
Yeah. It's been an interesting last several years, especially with how the economy's been and just the world's been. So it's definitely just a year of deciding factors on growth.
Yes. And so that's one where last year it was like personal growth came through this struggle of starting the business, of working with my wife and kids to figure out some family stuff. And then this year, and it turned the corner right around December, January, struggle has been a joy.
Yeah.
Or growth has been a joy. Sorry. Growth was a struggle. Growth became more of a joy over the last few months. And that's been really good.
Yeah.
Because before I said God and family were higher priorities than work. But in how I spent my time and my energy and what I thought about and really worked on, work was the highest priority.
Yeah, there's a contradiction.
Yes. And so this last year has been great because I've been able to put those priorities in the right places, and now I have things that I do every day to remind me of what's most important. And that's been a big change.
Yeah.
And it's been good.
So what tasks are you doing? Because before you thought it was God and family, but then you really realized it was work who was making the most priority in your life. Now you've transitioned, it's God family now again.
Yep.
And you just mentioned those tasks. What are you doing to remind yourself of those priorities?
So I don't start work now in the day until I get to a point of feeling like I've connected with God. That can be fairly quick. Yesterday it took me like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So there's some back and forth there. And then at the end of each day, I picked this up from a podcast, actually, Go Podcast. But there's a script I say at the end of each day. It's a little piece of paper by my desk. So at the end of each day, I say, I'm a child of God. My family and my health are more important to me than this job. I've done enough work for today. I'm getting up and going home. Close my computer, full stop. I usually say it a couple of times because I'm pretty dumb. So you gotta catch up with it.
I wouldn't say that, but maybe like persistent in the aspect that you want to get stuff done.
Yes. Oh man. Yeah. It's so hard to turn that off sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's almost as if work was a drug. And that feeling of success and accomplishment out here was feeling so good. And I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes successful business leaders have just disasters happening at home.
Yeah.
And there was some of that going on where I really needed to put time and energy into my home life and my personal growth instead of doing everything to make the work successful and letting this pay the price.
And that's the hard part is there's a good quote by Jeffrey Bezos, founder of Amazon. It's not work-life balance, it's work-life harmony. So it's the aspect of loving what you do, that you're engaged in it. When you're there, you're loving what you do, but having that harmony of knowing you need to be at home because if you love your job, if you love what you do, you'll become a better husband, better father.
Yeah.
And then when you're a better father and a better husband, you're better at what you do at work.
Yeah.
But it's finding that aspect of mixing the two and having that harmonization of it and making sure each priority is getting the amount of time it needs.
Yes. Yeah.
Because if you're taking, because we all have 24 hours in a day, right?
Yep.
So anytime someone asks me, hey, can you do this or whatever, a lot of times I used to say, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for it. Everyone has 24 hours in a day. There's plenty of time to get stuff done. Now it's what am I willing to give up time from to do this task?
Yeah.
A lot of times now I'll just say, hey, I'm not willing to give up time in this role because either I can work 10, 12 hours a day, and right now I am.
Right.
But it's just me, and I don't have my daughter week on, week off, so I can do that. I get my free time, and then I can also sleep. But when I have my daughter, it's my work hours cut back to a normal working hour.
Yeah.
Because if I'm working, I'm taking time away from her.
And you mentioned earlier, it sounds like you're really in a season of growth. So that makes sense, especially when if we view life as seasons, like what's appropriate for this season, what's appropriate for this season, and tweaking things. Yeah. That's what I know I've gotten stuck where I continue doing the same things even though life has changed around me. And it sounds like you're being sensitive to that to say, what should this tension look like? Yeah. Day to day.
Because again, like I can work 18 hours if I want to.
Yeah.
It just comes down to I'm taking time away from sleeping or I'm taking time away from the aspect just to sit and do nothing.
Yes.
Recharge a little bit. So I look at all these hyper successful people that are able to accomplish so much in 24 hours.
Yeah.
But they're working 10, 15, 18 hours a day, sleeping in their office, getting 6 hours of sleep, and they just do that 7 days a week. Yeah. But they're highly productive, highly successful, and it's because they're putting so much into their work life that they don't have a family or they've lost the family.
Yeah.
Or their health goes, or other things go because they're so fixated on that success. So it's finding the balance, the harmony to find what actually works. Now, if you're in growth phase and you don't have a family, then sure. Yeah. There's no reason. Different. Just put all the time and money and energy you have into your business.
That's great.
Grow it, and then once you get to a point of growth and a level of multitude that you can, hey, you know what, I can take off the gas a little bit and it'll be fine. Yep. I don't need to have full bore. I can go half bore. Yeah. And the business will still be fine. I can get my time back a little bit. You know, the aspect of buying back your time. And then now I can start working on exploring an option of a family or exploring options of just taking more time off. So it just depends.
Yeah. And that's one where last summer during the business transition, I asked my family, I said, hey, this is what we're doing. I need more time right now. Okay, that's great. But September, November, 6 months in, we hit profitability. Hey, bills are paid. It was to take the foot off the gas, pull back, focus on growing quality over quantity. So my growth goals are tiny compared to most financial advisors. My goal is to bring on 10 more clients this year. I've already brought on 2, 10 more. And I'll do that so slowly because I'm not willing to give up the time. I'm not willing to take time from here to put it here because we have enough. The challenge that I've been going through this last week is there's a faith-driven entrepreneur group that I'm a part of. It's Christian or faith-driven business owners. And one of the challenges this last week for me was to think about contentment a lot. And so there's a verse I'm memorizing now about contentment, and it's saying, is this enough? Can I stop? Because business owners are particularly driven sometimes to always climb the next mountain, and the next one's always bigger, and it's always coming. So
that's the hard part is when you're an entrepreneur, you get addicted to the success, like you said. So when you find success and you're continuing to be success, you almost get bored of it, and so you look for the next. What's the next successful thing that you can do?
Yeah, and at the big firm, the success scale was always going up. So even though I was staying at the top of it, the next month was always harder.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, I loved that in some ways, but again, it wasn't giving me the seasons to take off and then spend with family. It was just, nope, you got to keep building.
So when you were at the big box, were you considered an employee or were you 1099 contractor?
That's the other piece of it. So I was an employee. So they owned the book of business. Gotcha. And so now it's more, I have my own firm. I partner with a big firm that holds the money, holds the investments. They're not in my basement. It's still there, but this way I own the book of business. And that's the other benefit of transitioning earlier because it was going to happen at some point. It was just the path I was on and the mentality I have, I was going to want to own my own practice. So that's one of the other blessings is that it happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Because now I've got 30 years to build my own asset instead of theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with you being an employee and now you're 1099, right?
Yep.
You're self-employed. So there's things going on in Washington State that if you have a certain amount of employees, now that you're no longer an employee and you have the potential to hire people, tell us a little bit more what's going on in Washington State when you have employees.
Sure. But yeah, for business owners that have employees, and I don't think this is going to matter so much for us because we both use some assistants and different people, but they aren't W-2 employees. But for every business owner that listens to this podcast that is going to have or already has 5 or more employees, there's a new law coming. It's already in place. It just hasn't kicked in yet. But when it kicks in, it's going to really hurt their bottom line because Washington State is going to force everyone with 5 or more employees into a business retirement plan through the state. So the business owner can't participate, but the business owner has to facilitate every employee's money going off to the state-funded retirement program or employee-funded retirement program, but it's run by the state. That's not a huge deal, and in some ways that's really good for employees. It's going to be a great thing for employees.
Yeah.
Business owners take it on the chin because they're having to do something they can't participate in. They're facilitating something. They're using HR time and money, right, or business owner time and money to explain this thing to their employees. But by itself, it's not that bad. The really difficult challenge is that once Washington State has forced every business to have this plan, it's going to automatically disqualify them from the federal tax credits that they could capture right now that would save them thousands of dollars to do their own thing. So right now, any Tom, Dick, or Harry can say, hey, I've got 20 employees, business is going great, let me go get a 401k. I'm going to start a 401k, I'm going to save for myself, I'm going to give some to my employees, it's going to be great. And the federal government will say, okay, here's some tax credits. It's dollars off your tax bill to help you do that. So this is money you would have already spent anyway, right? And now you get to put it into your employees' accounts for a benefit, which helps you get better employees and keep them longer. You get to help pay for the plan cost, which helps you then put in your own money, right? Huge tax benefits all the way around. But Washington State says, no, you got to do it our way, and you got to do it now. and that's going to disqualify everybody from the federal tax credits. So
Nice.
the average employer with, say, 35 employees is going to be missing out on about $150,000 of tax credits, which is nuts.
Thanks, Washington State.
Yeah, so Washington State is doing this thing that sounds good, feels good, and as a single entity isn't terrible. It's fine. I don't really think they should, but it's fine. The problem is they're getting their wires crossed with the feds and costing Washington State business owners hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. And that's a problem.
That is a problem because, again, if you have multiple employees and if you rely on tax credits or anything like that to make sure your bottom line that you're not in the red every single year,
yes,
that could be a huge deal.
Yes, and every business owner out there needs to start taking some of their money and investing it elsewhere for their retirement, just to have two profit streams. That's a big deal, right? So a lot of what I do is helping successful business owners take money out of the business and set it aside for themselves, and along the way, save a lot of money on taxes. But some of the best tools for that are now going to be, they're still going to be available, but the tax credits won't be available to help. So now they'll just cost thousands and thousands of dollars more than they needed to, because Washington State's sticking its nose in and messing with
Washington
everybody's
State
stuff.
can stick its nose in a few things sometimes.
They do. So this law is already on the books. It's coming in just a year or two where it's going to kick in, and they're going to start taking money out of people's paychecks to put into their retirement accounts. It's going to happen automatically to employees. So there's going to be a lot of...
You're so worked up, I can't talk, I can't breathe. Oh, I'm so frustrated.
I'm just imagining the look on the average employee's face when they find out 3% of their paycheck just went to a retirement account they never heard of or signed up for, because it's going to be automatically enrolled. Again, it's good for their savings, right? They do need to save for retirement, but they're not going to know it's happening. They're not going to pay attention, and the business owner is going to get yelled at for their money being gone, and then the business owner is going to have to try to help them get their money back out of the system. And the free program is going to cost the business owner a ton of money and time.
Yeah, because if an employee is forcibly being signed up for a 3% deduction from their pay to go into this 401k account, it's one, what happens if there's individuals who are working paycheck to paycheck, don't have that money?
And that's most of them.
At that be a huge amount.
Yeah.
That's big.
Yeah.
And is there any, what happens if the employee has their own personal 401k account? Do they still have to do?
They still will be automatically enrolled unless they have to proactively say no. So there will be an option for them. But who's going to pay attention and do that? Not many of your average employees. They're just going along, they're doing their thing. Something comes in the mail about benefits, they toss it in the trash, and then 3% is missing from their paycheck, and they blow a fuse.
Yeah.
Right? For the lower income folks, it's going to be really challenging. They can get that money back, but they're going to have to jump through some hoops to do, and it's going to be a bit of a headache.
What happens if they already have
Something
401k with the employer already, and the employer contributes a percentage as well, but they already, let's say they contribute 6%.
So that's the good news, actually. So if the business already has a 401k, they're opted out of the Washington State one.
Okay.
So that's where, over the next year or two, every business owner needs to evaluate what kind of plan they need so that they can do two things. So that they can get the federal tax credits, hundreds of thousands of dollars back in taxes, and so that then they're opted out of the state program. They just don't have to deal with it.
Okay.
Because when you do it yourself, if you're feeling techie and you feel like you understand what's happening, you can go online, you can start a 401k for your company. It's not that big a deal. If you feel like you're already wearing too many hats and this isn't your realm and you don't know how to do this, you talk to a guy like me and they help you do it. And then you have service, right? You have customer service right there in your building helping you, which the state can't do. That's not what they do.
Yeah, no, they give me money. There's no questions to be asked, and we will not help you. Just fork it over.
Yep. And we mentioned what happens to the low-income folks, but the high-income folks are also going to have a problem. Because what Washington State is setting up is basically a Roth IRA. That's the money that you've already paid taxes on, goes in, and it grows tax-deferred, and it comes out tax-free. Roth IRAs are great. But there are income limits. If you make too much money, you can't put it into a Roth IRA. I think we ran into that problem with you a little while ago. It's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
You got to do this thing called the backdoor Roth. You have to jump through some hoops to get the money in. But nobody's going to be watching that for the thousands of Washington State citizens that are going to be dumped into this new plan.
Yeah.
And so there are going to be households where, sure, maybe the guy makes $60,000 over here in this job, but maybe his wife is an attorney and making several $100,000, and their combined income puts them over the limits for the Roth IRA contribution. Nobody notices for 5-10 years. Then the IRS comes in and says, you can't do that. And they owe 6% penalty on all the money they put in. They got to pull it all out.
Oof.
This is setting up a nightmare. This is setting up a disaster 10 years from now. So there's the immediate impact of the federal tax credits, but there's the long-term impact of this is going to be a mess because nobody's paying attention to that.
Yeah, it's going to be, Washington State is really going to have to hit hard on the promotions, the advertising, telling the employers, like, you have to hit your employees hard on this to let them know.
Yeah.
And especially if they're in a certain tax bracket, you would hope individuals that are in a certain tax bracket that they have a CPA, they have a financial advisor, they have someone with them.
Yeah, you'd hope.
Who can really understand like this. You would hope, because if you make a lot of money, you should have someone who's helping you secure that money.
You would hope.
To make more money.
Yeah.
And even if you don't make a ton of money, you should have a financial advisor. I would feel, if you make $50,000, you should at least have a relationship with a financial advisor.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just making 50 grand right now. What can I do to get started? Is there any things to be aware of? I'm sure there's financial advisors that will help you, even if you're making 50,000 and you're just doing something here and there. I'm sure there's platforms out there to help you out.
There are ways you can, now at that income level, you're probably going to be doing something more online, right? It's going to be maybe call somebody that you don't really know. So it's not going to be as much of a relationship unless you have some funds to go out and pay for planning, right? Yeah. So I can work with clients who either have a bunch of money and pay me from their investments, or they can pay me for financial planning, and we can just do that. But typically, my cost anyway, because I'm a small boutique firm doing my specific thing, my costs aren't a good fit for somebody of that income because it's just not going to be the right fit.
Yeah.
Unless they already have investments. Maybe they're heading into retirement or something.
Yeah, because it could be the thing. They may make $50,000, but they have $500, $1 million in retirement.
Or inheritance, or
stuff like that.
Especially somebody that gets a brand new inheritance. Brand new client this last month had multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars come from an uncle. It's one of those dream scenarios.
Wow, good for him.
I know, right?
Wow.
We always hear about the uncle from New Jersey, but nobody ever has one. This guy had one. I don't know where he's from. But yeah, so now it's that idea of, we've got this money, what do we do with it? And so of course they didn't have a financial advisor. They never had money before.
Yeah.
Now they do.
Smart on them, because usually the majority of people would take that money and just spend it.
But one person in the couple said, no, we need to save it. And the other guy says, hey, let's spend some. My job was to come in and say, how do we have a plan that saves enough, but also lets you spend some and enjoy it? And so we were able to work that out. That's a fun conversation to have, because I want them to spend some money. I want them to enjoy life. It's about, how do we help you have an abundant life and plan for the future?
Yeah,
we got to do both. And Washington State now is trying to do that for everybody. They're saying this is how to do it. I'm a big freedom guy. I want people to choose something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
that's painful.
With all that and everything you got going on, do you have any kind of new stuff that you're working on that you want to share?
Sure, I do. So one of the things I've mentioned a lot throughout this conversation has been taxes. One of the things I couldn't do before at the big box firm was tax planning. Anything that I talked about with people about taxes was basically doing it off the top of my head, what I knew, writing on pencil and paper some calculations. That's not the right way to do tax planning.
Yeah.
And most financial advisors don't do any kind of tax planning, because if it gets into tax advice, they get in trouble. So you have to have a boundary there. I'm not a CPA. I don't give tax advice. But we can talk all day long about the best moves to make, right? And then you can make some decisions, or we can bring your CPA in to talk about which of these decisions do we make. And so that's one where right now I'm offering to anybody who wants to. They can go on my website to deepcreekfinancialplanning.com, click on the tax savings button, and then upload their tax return and schedule a Zoom call. Simple. It's easy. We meet for 15 minutes on Zoom and I say, hey, here's what happened in 2024. That's fine, right? It's helpful, sometimes some education, but that's not the fun part. The fun part is to say, and what will happen? What will your taxes look like this year? And particularly, what will they look like next year?
Yeah.
So I have a client that his income was going up a lot, big tax jump, but even expecting his income to stay the same for next year, as we looked out a couple of years, he was going to pay $21,000 more in taxes because of tax law changes.
Yeah.
Congress is fiddling with them right now. Once they stop fiddling with them, my tax software will get an update. I'll get an update. We'll run all of my clients' reports through again, and we'll say, what should you expect in 2026?
Yeah.
Hopefully, he doesn't have to expect a $20,000 additional tax bill to what he was already paying. But that's why we run it.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I'm working on my taxes right now with my CPA.
Yeah.
And I got to do some more homework to give him. Because, hey, I need some more information, or I need you to tell me about a few things. And that tells me I owe money.
And that's what CPAs are so good at. They look behind. They say, what happened last year?
Yep.
And how do we get you the best deal?
Yep.
I rarely do that. My job is to help people look ahead and say, for the next year, for the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, how do we get you in a position to do the right things to set you up for success? And very few people do that.
No.
And I love that part of it. It's so fun.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up,
Sure.
if you could give any advice to someone who's looking to start a business or grow their business, what advice would you have since you grew your own?
Sure. I would say one of the most fun things I do, and it's led to some business opportunities, but it's also just a good way to live. I ask random strangers out to coffee. Playing pickleball, we meet on LinkedIn, however we meet, I'll be like, hey, let's grab coffee. I'll generally do the network-friendly thing and talk about them first. Yeah. And if they're really cool, maybe we'll get together again and I'll get to share a little bit about me. But long-term, all I have to do is do that enough times and then stay connected with people who are maybe particularly interesting, particularly kind, particularly successful, whatever it is, something about them is just, I like them. That's cool. Let's stay connected. That has been really enriching to my life.
Yeah.
Not just in some of the business that has come my way because of it, but because of the friendships, because of meeting somebody with a job I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
Who's doing cool stuff. You know, whatever it is, just that little bit of personal humanity, getting a glimpse into who they are as a person, and hopefully making their life better in the 30, 45 minutes we grab coffee in some small way. So I would say ask random strangers out to coffee. Or if you're eating lunch by yourself, go sit down next to somebody else eating lunch and say, hey.
Probably say, hey, can I sit down?
That's true.
Just don't randomly, hey, I'm going to sit here.
I usually do ask, but that has led to some of the most fun conversations. And it's a great thing to just get out of your shell a little bit. You stop thinking about work, you think about a person, and that switch is so important to flip in your mind sometimes to just make sure you're focusing on people for people's sake, not for any personal gain. And it's fun.
There you go. That's great advice. So Caleb, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll have you on again. Who knows?
Sure.
Depends if there's more laws in Washington State that you need to talk about.
I hope not, but I'm sure there will be. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. And man, I love what you're doing with the Our Connect gathering events. They almost always conflict with things I already have scheduled. So I keep trying to make them because they just look so cool. And I know some of the other people that you've got involved in leadership, you guys are doing a great job. I really appreciate it.